Sauron is the most popular antagonist in Tolkien's universe. His importance was so great that his title, The Lord of the Rings, ended up being used by Tolkien himself to name his most famous trilogy. Despite his importance in the story, as all of you know, Sauron barely appears in the movies. For anyone who only watched the adaptations, he feels more like a distant threat that we know very little about, limited to the top of a tower. That said, in this video we'll take a look at 5 interesting facts about Sauron that the movies never told you. 1. Sauron, the shapeshifter. Up until the middle of the Second Age, Sauron was a complete shapeshifter, able to take on any form that suited his plans. He once took the shape of a vampire, a werewolf, a serpent, quoting the Silmarillion. Then Sauron shifted shape from wolf to serpent and from monster to his own accustomed form. And later as a vampire, quote again, and immediately he took the form of a vampire, great as a dark cloud across the moon. And he fled, dripping blood from his throat upon the trees. But the most harmful forms Sauron ever took were not monstrous at all. They were beautiful. In the fair form of Anatar, Sauron infiltrated the elves and caused the downfall of Eregion. Under the name Zigur, he infiltrated the Númenóreans and brought about the downfall of the entire country. After these events, Ilúvatar, the god of Tolkien's universe, removed Sauron's ability to take on fair shapes. From that point on, he could only appear in forms that matched his corrupted spirit. In letter 211, Tolkien confirms that this was an act of none other than the creator himself. Quote, Sauron was first defeated by a miracle, a direct action of God. And in the Silmarillion, it is confirmed that Sauron was robbed of this gift. Quote, but Sauron was not of mortal flesh, and though he was robbed now of that shape in which he had wrought so great an evil, so that he could never again appear fair to the eyes of men. 2. Sauron, the second Dark Lord. As surprising as it may sound to casual viewers, Sauron was not the first to bear the title of Dark Lord. He inherited that title from his master, Morgoth, the first Dark Lord. The thing is, the movies show only a small fraction of a much larger history. The War of the Ring, for example, happens in the Third Age, but very little is shown or even mentioned about the ages before that. Peter Jackson actually considered a longer prologue that would at least explain who or what Sauron was, but the idea was cut. The prologue ended up being much shorter. Back then, the studios already felt the movies were too long for theatrical standards, and the extended editions only came later on DVD. Now, getting to the main point, let me keep this as simple as possible. In Tolkien's universe, there are the native races of Middle-earth: elves, men, dwarves, and there are spiritual beings far older than the world itself. These beings are called the Ainur, divided into Valar and Maiar. The Valar are the greater spirits, the Maiar the lesser ones. Tolkien compares them to angelic beings. Quoting letter 131, they were, as one might say, the near equivalent in the mode of these tales of angels. Sauron, the Balrogs, and the wizards are all Maiar. Of different kind, of course, but Maiar nevertheless. Morgoth, Sauron's master, on the other hand, was a Vala. So even though Sauron was a fallen angel of immense power, he was still less powerful than his master. Who would be something like a corrupted archangel if we use that angelic analogy? When Morgoth was defeated and cast into the void, his lieutenant Sauron inherited his title and became the second Dark Lord. 3. Sauron's true name. Tolkien, a master linguist, was very deliberate when choosing the names of both Dark Lords. Most of you probably already know this, but just so we're all on the same page, Sauron's master had 2 main names, Melkor and Morgoth. To put it simply, Melkor was his name before his fall, and Morgoth was the name he received after it. Melkor was the firstborn of the Valar, and his name meant, he who arises in might. After his fall, he was renamed Morgoth, which means black foe of the world. Similarly, Sauron also had another name before his fall, Mairon, which means the admirable. After he rebelled, the High Elves began calling him Sauron, meaning the abhorred or the abominable, as a form of mockery, since it means the exact opposite of his original name. But Sauron had many names, some given to him, others he used as disguises. Besides Sauron and Mairon, he was known as Gortau, Zigur, the Necromancer, Anatar, among others. 4. What was Sauron's plan? As controversial as it may sound, Sauron's ultimate goal was completely different from his master's. Morgoth was a lunatic driven by pure destruction. Sauron, on the other hand, did not want to destroy the world. He wanted to control it. Tolkien explains that Morgoth reached such a level of nihilistic madness that, had he ever achieved victory, he would have eventually turned against his own servants and wiped out the orcs as well. Quoting Morgoth's ring, when Melkor was confronted by the existence of other inhabitants of Arda with other wills and intelligences, he was enraged by the mere fact of their existence, and his only notion of dealing with them was by physical force, or the fear of it. His sole ultimate object was their destruction. Elves and still more men, he despised because of their weakness. This was sheer nihilism and negation its one ultimate object. Morgoth would no doubt, if he had been victorious, have ultimately destroyed even his own creatures, such as the orcs. Morgoth had no plan, unless destruction and reduction to nil of a world in which he had only a share can be called a plan. A fascinating fella, isn't he? Sauron, however, kept a small part of what he once was. Tolkien says that his greatest virtue was also the reason for his downfall: perfectionism. His obsessive pursuit of order led to his fall, because he believed it inconceivable that so many beings had independent wills constantly clashing with each other. In his mind, true order could never exist under those conditions. Quoting Morgoth's ring again, Sauron had never reached this stage of nihilistic madness. He did not object to the existence of the world so long as he could do what he liked with it. He still had the relics of positive purposes that descended from the good of the nature in which he began. It had been his virtue, and therefore also the cause of his fall and of his relapse, that he loved order and coordination, and disliked all confusion and wasteful friction. It was the apparent will and power of Melkor to effect his designs quickly and masterfully that had first attracted Sauron to him. 5. Sauron and the Balrogs. Sauron and the Balrogs shared the highest ranks under Morgoth, but their roles were very different. The Balrogs were the elite shock troops of the first Dark Lord. Whenever some particularly dangerous enemy appeared on the battlefield, Morgoth relied on them. Sauron, however, acted as the head of intelligence. His methods rarely relied on brute force. Instead, he preferred cunning and deceit. Quoting the Silmarillion, "In all the deeds of Melkor, the Morgoth, upon Arda, in his vast works and in the deceits of his cunning, Sauron had a part, and was only less evil than his master." A classic example of Sauron's deceptive approach is the forging and distribution of the Rings of Power. Instead of confronting the peoples of Middle-earth directly through violence, Sauron offered these gifts disguised as a Trojan horse, all while secretly forging the one ring that would dominate them. Another example came when Sauron's hunters captured a man named Gorlim. They took him to the camp and tortured him for information, but the use of violence failed. He did not break. So they brought him before Sauron himself. And Gorlim said he wished to see his wife, Eiluned. And here's what happened, quoting the Silmarillion. "Then straightway they brought him into the dreadful presence of Sauron. And Sauron said, 'I hear now that thou wouldst barter with me. What is thy price?' And Gorlim answered that he should find Eiluned again, and with her be set free. For he thought Eiluned also had been made captive. Then Sauron smiled, saying, 'That is a small price for so great a treachery. So shall it surely be. Say on.' Now Gorlim would have drawn back, but daunted by the eyes of Sauron, he told at last all that he would know. Then Sauron laughed, and he mocked Gorlim, and revealed to him that he had only seen a phantom devised by wizardry to entrap him, for Eiluned was dead. 'None the less I will grant thy prayer,' said Sauron, 'and thou shalt go to Eiluned, and be set free of my service.' Then he put him cruelly to death." If you like this kind of video, consider subscribing and leaving a like for more. It really helps small channels like this. Take care and see you in the next one.